Hello everyone! Today we're going to be jumping back into Standard with a Dimir Faerie deck. Now, as you would imagine, this deck has the three things that you would expect. It has fairies, it has counterspells, and it has removal, right? That's the Dimir Faerie deck at its core. So down in the 1 mana spot, we have our Sleep Cursed Faerie. This is a 1 mana 3/3 flying ward 2 creature, which is just an insane number of stats to have on this. Now it does have the downside of entering tapped with 3 stun counters on it, but we can go ahead and pay 2 mana to untap Sleep Cursed Faerie. Now that's just going to remove the stun counters first, but as soon as all those stun counters are gone, we're actually going to be able to untap our Sleep Cursed Faerie after combat as well and keep it up as a blocker. Ego Drain is just like a Thoughtseize, except there's going to be no downside if we have a Faerie. And then we of course have our Faerie Dream Thief, another one of our cheap Fae to get out onto the battlefield. It's going to let us surveil one, and as an extra added bonus for 3 mana, we can exile it from our graveyard to draw a card and lose a life. Now this could give us a little bit of extra steam in the late game if necessary, but either way, enabling our Faerie synergies for 1 mana is going to be really strong. Now Faerie Fencing, similarly, is a removal spell that's going to benefit from our fairies. So target creature is going to get -X/-X until the end of the turn, right? So that's pretty good. All by itself, but then if we do control a fairy when we cast the spell, we're going to go ahead and give an additional -3/-3. So at its base, this is going to be a 1 mana -3/-3 removal spell if we have a fairy. Very strong for us. Faerie Mastermind to capitalize on our opponent drawing cards, and the Picklock Prankster here actually is going to be able to get us some more fairies off the top of our deck by having us mill 4 and put 1 into our hand. It's also a 1/3 flying vigilance creature, which is pretty good. Spell Stutter is our fairy-specific counterspell. So not only is it counter or target spell unless it's a controller pays 2, so very similar to Quench, but we also get that additional 1 mana that our opponent's going to have to pay for each fairy we control, so going wide with fairies on the board is going to be good. We have 1 copy of Go for the Throat, just a nice removal spell, and then we have Obira, the Dreaming Duelist. Now this is a flash fairy, so not only can we hold up our counterspells and removal and then play this fairy at the end of turn, but we also get that kind of Lord effect where whenever another fairy enters the battlefield under our control, each opponent loses 1 life, so that's pretty good. Now we do have Halo Forager here. This is kind of like a worse Snapcaster in this deck. It gives us our fairy synergy. It's a 3/1 for 3 mana with flying, which isn't terrible, but we can go ahead and pay X mana when we have this enter the battlefield and cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value X from our graveyard without paying its cost. So this is a great way to bring back Faerie Fencing for extra removal, maybe bring back an Ego Drain to go ahead and get rid of another card out of our opponent's hand, or maybe even go for the Throat to kill something. Then at the top of our deck, we have Talion, the Kindly Lord. Now, this is a 4 mana 3/4 flying fairy noble. This is a pretty solid card. We get to pick a number between 1 and 10, and whenever our opponent casts a spell with either mana value, power, or toughness equal to that number, we're going to have that player go ahead and lose 2 life, and we're going to draw a card. So this is very circumstantial. We do want to make sure we're picking the right number, but this could be really strong when it comes to stabilizing into aggro-type decks, giving us lots of card draw and punishing our opponent for their cheap spells. Similar can be good against control decks with similarly costed cards. Either way, we're going to be choosing that number based on what our opponent's deck is and what we think they're going to be playing. Mana base is fairly straightforward. Notable inclusions are Otawara and Takenuma, giving us some extra utility there. Now, if you guys have been enjoying my content, make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on my latest videos. And if you do enjoy this video, make sure you give it a like. Let's go ahead and see how this deck does. Alright, looks like we're on the play here. We don't have any black mana, but we are going to be able to start with our Sleep Cursed Faerie. We're going to take the mulligan though, because having access to that black mana is going to be important for us. Now in this case, I'm going to go ahead and keep this hand. We're going to go ahead bottom Halo Forager. Now we also don't have access to black mana here, but we will have our Spell Stutter as a counterspell, and we have this Picklock Prankster that we can go ahead and use as well. Opponent's forcing a discard here. Honestly, I think we're gonna... No, I want to hold on to Talion for the late game. Let's get rid of Faerie Fencing. Now we have Flash here on the Faerie Mastermind, and we have Free the Fae as an instant, so I think we're just gonna hold off hold up Spell Stutter, and then choose what we want to do at the end of our opponent's turn. Voldaren Epicure. Honestly, I think they could have that. Not too concerned about the Epicure. Alright, let's flash out the Faerie Mastermind. This is going to give us a little bit of an advantage here, as now we are going to have that tempo swing in our favor. Now we can go ahead, swing out. End the turn. And add a bonus. If our opponent does use that blood token, they will be drawing their second card this turn, and that will trigger us drawing a card as well. We'll just counter that. Keep our opponent off Lord Skitter. Yep, we're more than happy to take 1 damage since we do have the tempo advantage. Swing. Again, as long as our opponent's attacking us for 1 and we're attacking them for 2, we are on the path to beat them. We can let them have this Epicure, not like we can interact, but we do have an instant. And I do want to make them think, just by pausing for a moment, that there is something we could do. Again, our opponent has evened up the tempo in terms of damage, but we are still attacking them first, bringing them lower first, so as the race to 0 goes, we are winning. Nixilis. Let's go ahead and see if we can find a Faerie here. Interesting. Faerie Fencing is an option. I think Ego Drain is going to be better.
I'm the new boss around here. Join me or die.
Yep. Opponent's going to gain some life. That's fine. We'll discard Talion.
Coin or carnage. Tribute is owed.
Let's see. I think we go Ego Drain here. Get rid of Beseech the Mirror. Don't want our opponent having that. We'll play out our Faerie. Move to combat. Kill the bigger Ob.
This isn't over.
Now, just based on what I see here, I feel like 1 is a decent number. Interesting. Go for the throw. That's fine. They can go ahead, kill the Picklock Prankster. We're going to decline this discard.
Plead for mercy.
So now this Ob is going to be dead to Faerie Mastermind. Next turn we can play out Talion. I think Talion picking 1 is going to be the way to go here. Yep. Well, let's start by going to combat. Kill Ob Nixilis. That's fine. Opponent's gonna do some scrying. Now, additionally, 3 might also be another strong pick for us, since 3 is Lord Skitter, Nixilis, and our opponent did scry something on top. I think Talion on 3, honestly, might be the better play for us, even though our opponent has a lot of things on 1. We're gonna go with 3. Interesting, they chose to grab a Mirex. Alright. Interesting. Alright, well, we're gonna just move to combat. Swing out here. Opponent's charging up Blast Zone. If we do want to use Faerie Mastermind, we should use it now. So I will. I'd like that extra card. And now we have Faerie Fencing to deal with Shieldred pre-draw. Perfect. Okay, so we have to play this out on 2. Kill Shieldred. Draw. Move to our main phase. Ego Drain isn't going to do anything for us. We do have to hold back a blocker, so we'll just swing like this. Now, unfortunately, with the auto-tapping there, it did tap down both of our blue lands. We should have been able to flash out another Faerie. That is much worse for us. Okay, they're getting ready to kill Talion. Gonna take 2 damage if they swing out. Well, let's go Ego Drain here. Force our opponent to do something. We can counter it if we need to. Alright, so now we know what they have. And then, honestly here, I think we're good to just swing out. Or we could keep Talion back. They're probably going to go ahead and blow up Blast Zone, though. We can block with Obiara. And hold up Spell Stutter. Looking good. So our opponent can no longer... Interesting. We're gonna go ahead, flash in Obiara. And we're gonna go ahead and flash in another Obiara. Now, notably, this is a Faerie. It entered the battlefield. Opponent loses 1 and 2, and we've got it. Alright, this time we are on the play. And honestly, this looks pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and keep. I'm going to start with a Swamp. Go ahead, pass the turn. Next turn, we'll play out our island. We can hold up Spell Stutter. If not, we have OBR. Then Ego Drain the following turn. Yep, so we'll go ahead and do that. If we had another untapped black land, you could make a case for going ahead and playing out our Faerie Dream Thief and then going for the Ego Drain. But now we've got Ego Drain. Let's take a look at what our opponent's got going on. Alright, so lots of ramp. Let's get rid of the Stomper. Play the Marsh. Go Ego Drain once again. Let's go Bramble Familiar. As long as we have our Spell Stutter for one of their big threats, I think we're going to be fine. Opponent's probably going to tear Asunder here, yep. Funnily enough, I think we just replay our creature. Play out the Dream Thief as well. We get to Surveil, deal some damage. Faerie Fencing. I don't mind Faerie Fencing, so we'll hold on to that for our draw next turn. Can get rid of our opponent's Mana Dork, make it even harder for them to cast. Alright. Moving to combat, we're just going to swing out. Faerie Fencing. We'll pick 0, -3/-3, because we have a Faerie. Go ahead, get rid of the Scrap Forger. Keep everything in our graveyard as well. Hold up a Spell Stutter. Just attacking, and that's fine. We have Faerie Mastermind here that we can flash out now. Gonna deal some extra damage. Still holding up Spell Stutter. Do I care enough to keep it? I think so. We have enough of an advantage on our opponent currently. Yep, and they don't draw the land, or they do. Interesting. Well, move to combat. Play out our Dream Thief. See if we can find our next land. Another Spell Stutter, that's honestly going to be pretty good for us. Now, if that's a land, they probably would have played it already. Flash in our Faerie Mastermind. It's going to deal 1 damage on ETB, and it looks like we've got it. Alright. Alright, here we are on the play. Now, 1 land, we can't keep that. 2 lands, slightly better, but we don't have access to the blue we need. We'll take one more mulligan, go down to 5. Now this one we'll keep. Let's see, Shipwreck March can go away. Though, honestly, I think we'd like to have that more than Otwara. Dream Thief, Spell Stutter is good. We can go ahead and throw Talion above that on the bottom. Start by playing out our Dream Thief. And Surveil to fix our next draw. That's a perfect next draw. The adventure's gonna give us some extra value. Let us find a Faerie. Delver, alright. Swinging out 4-1. Gonna end the turn. We've got Spell Stutter held up. So we know our opponent runs Counterspells. Gonna go for the Picklock Prankster. Get a Dream Thief. Go ahead, play out our Dream Thief. Don't mind drawing that land for Talion. Swinging out for that one. So our opponent's going to be holding up that Dissipate that we know about. So next turn, I think we just play our Prankster, see if we can draw the Counterspell out. And we do. That's fine by me. No attacks. I think we'll hold these up as blockers. Dissuade the Insectile Aberration, having Spell Stutter up with 2 fairies. Making it real hard for our opponent to cast spells. We'll just double block here. Go ahead, counter that. No extra value for you. Now we do have a difficult choice for Talion, I think. Honestly, Talion on 1 might be good here. Or Talion on 3, actually. Because 3 is going to hit Sleep Cursed Fae. And 3 is going to go ahead and hit any other counter spells as well. So that's pretty strong value for us. We are, of course, outside of Lightning Strike range there. Well, we've got a couple of different Sleep Cursed Fairies to get out onto the battlefield. There's 1. Here's 2. What's better than 1 Sleep Cursed Fairy? 2 of them. Do I want to attack here? I think I do. We're gonna go ahead and get that damage in. Yep, got our opponent down at 9. Again, we're probably restricting what they can cast with Talion here, because that 2 damage is going to be fairly significant. Opponent's getting ready to untap their Sleep Cursed Fairy. We're going to use 2 of our own mana to start there as well. Delver does not flip, so that's good for us. Let's see. They swing with the Delver, and that's fine. No, they don't. They keep it back. Alright, let's go ahead and activate this. Remove one of those stun counters. Now, I think I want to hold on to this. Do I want to draw a card? I think drawing another card here is going to be good for us. As an ability, it's going to be harder for our opponent to counter it and interact with that as well. Unfortunately for us, we were not as prepared. Swinging in 4-3. Would have loved to see a land. And we find the land on our end step. That's okay, though, because we can cast this next turn. And things are looking pretty good. Our opponent's down at 3. So we can kind of make a case for just untapping our Sleep Cursed Fairies. And of course, their Delver still hasn't flipped. Again, they're going to need more blocks than they have. Well, first and foremost, let's untap this. Then let's go ahead and move to combat. Swing here. Opponent's going to have to block. And then they'll have to deal with the other somehow. Okay. What are they going to do about Sleep Cursed Faerie, I wonder? Maybe a Lightning Strike? Pay the ward? Yep. Brings him down to 2. Down to 1. Okay. Damage kills that, so they don't have the blocker again. Let's go Dream Thief. Just one more thing for our opponent to have to remove. I don't mind drawing another Sleep Cursed Faerie here. That's not bad. Now we'll hold up 2 mana like we have a counterspell, and we can just untap this Fae. Even if they both flip, that's just gonna be 6. Phase out the back. Not too worried about that. Again, they have to keep the aberrations as blockers. We're gonna remove that last stun counter. And nope, seems like we've got it. Alright. Okay, everyone, so as you saw, Fairies is actually a very powerful deck to be running over in Standard. Talion makes it very difficult for our opponent to cast out some of their necessary threats, as the damage here is going to threaten them killing themselves, and that extra card draw is going to help us find the things that we need to slow them down and shut them off. Sleep Cursed Faerie is just insane value for a card. Sure, it's tapped for a while, but as soon as that becomes untapped, this is a 1-mana 3/3 with flying and ward 2 that can untap itself for 2 mana, which is really great. Ego Drain is like our standard Thoughtseize. We have strong removal with Faerie Fencing. Faerie Mastermind actually is a really good card as well. Having Flash is really big since we can hold up a counterspell and then choose to bring in Faerie Mastermind. We can also put Faerie Mastermind in response to our opponent drawing that second card, making sure that we also get value out of that as well. Obiara, really good. It's got that drain ability. It's a 2/2 flyer. It also has Flash, very strong for us. Now, we didn't get to see too much of Halo Forager doing its thing, but that being said, just bringing back a Faerie Fencing, bringing back Ego Drain can be really strong for us as well. And then Faerie Dream Thief, while not too impressive, can give us more cards in the late game, which is nice. The Surveil is pretty good on the ETB, but more importantly, it's just a cheap way to enable all of our Faerie synergies. I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and if you did, make sure you give it a like. But if you have any ideas for another deck that you'd like to see me play, why don't you let me know in a comment down below. I'll see you all next time.